Before you fall asleep tonight, let me tell you about a man who never died. His name was Enoch, and what happened to him has puzzled scholars, confused scientists, and challenged everything we think we know about life and death for thousands of years. Imagine this. You're living your normal life. You wake up, you work, you spend time with your family, but every day you feel something pulling at your heart, something calling you, something bigger than the world around you. That was Enoch's life. But here's where it gets strange, really strange. One day, Enoch simply vanished. Not died, not buried, just gone. The Bible says it in the simplest, most mysterious way possible. Enoch walked with God, and then he was no more because God took him away. Think about that for a moment. He didn't get sick. He didn't grow old and pass away peacefully. He didn't have a funeral. One moment he was here, walking the earth like you and me. The next moment, he was somewhere else entirely. Where did he go? What did he see? And why was he the only person in all of human history to leave Earth this way before Jesus? Tonight, as you rest and let your mind wander, we're going to explore one of the most fascinating mysteries in all of religious history. We're going to walk through the visions Enoch had. We're going to see what he saw in the heavens. We're going to discover secrets that were hidden for thousands of years. Some of what you'll hear might surprise you. Some of it might even disturb you. But all of it will make you think differently about the world around you. And here's something even more interesting. Everything Enoch wrote about, everything he saw in his visions, connects directly to questions we still ask today. Why is there evil in the world? Where did it come from? What happens after we die? Is there really a judgment day? And most importantly, is there hope for humanity? Enoch had answers, strange answers, ancient answers, but answers that still matter right now in our modern world. So get comfortable, relax your body, let your breathing slow down, because we're about to journey back to the very beginning of time, to meet a man who saw things no other human was meant to see. A man who walked between heaven and earth, a man who talked with angels, a man who was given a book containing the secrets of the universe. This is the story of Enoch, and it's unlike anything you've ever heard before. Let's begin. The man who never died, Enoch, was born into a world that was falling apart. This wasn't the peaceful, perfect world that Adam and Eve once knew in the Garden of Eden. That was long gone. By the time Enoch came along, humanity had been walking the earth for many generations. And with each generation, things got worse. People forgot about God. They became violent. They lied. They stole. They hurt each other. The world was descending into chaos, but Enoch was different. From the time he was young, something burned inside his heart. A hunger for something more, a desire to know the truth. While everyone around him chased after temporary pleasures and earthly power, Enoch looked up at the stars and wondered, who made all this? Why are we here? What's our purpose? These questions consumed him. And unlike most people who wonder about these things for a few moments before getting distracted by daily life, Enoch never stopped asking. He never stopped seeking. The Bible tells us that Enoch lived for 365 years. Now, back in those days, people lived much longer than we do now. Some lived for 800, even 900 years. so 365 years wasn't particularly long for that time period. But here's the fascinating part. The Bible specifically mentions that Enoch walked with God for 300 of those years. What does that mean? What does it mean to walk with God? It means Enoch developed a relationship with the Creator that was so close, so intimate, so real, that it transformed his entire existence. It wasn't just prayer once a week. It wasn't just following rules. It was constant communion, daily conversation, moment by moment awareness of God's presence. Think about your closest friend or family member, someone you talk to every day, someone who knows your deepest thoughts, someone you trust completely. Now multiply that connection by infinity. That's what Enoch had with God, and God noticed. The Bible says that before Enoch was taken away, he was commended as someone who pleased God. Out of all the people living on earth at that time, God chose Enoch. God looked at this one man and said, "This is someone special." But why Enoch? What made him different? Was he perfect? No. The Bible never claims he was without sin. Was he royalty? No. He wasn't a king or a warrior or a wealthy merchant. Was he famous? Not particularly. He was just an ordinary man who made an extraordinary choice. He chose to seek God with his whole heart. And that choice changed everything. Because here's something most people don't know. Enoch didn't just walk with God in his daily life. He was also given visions. Powerful, terrifying, overwhelming visions that showed him the secrets of heaven and earth. He saw things that weren't meant for human eyes. He was taken on journeys beyond the physical world. He met angels. He saw the throne of God. He was shown the future and the past. He learned about the fall of angels, the judgment to come, and the ultimate plan for humanity's redemption. And he wrote it all down. Yes, Enoch wrote books. Ancient books that contained all of his visions and revelations. These books were treasured by early believers. They were quoted by ancient teachers. They were considered inspired and important. But then, something strange happened. Over time, most of Enoch's writings disappeared from mainstream religious texts. They were removed, hidden, or lost. Why? What was in those books that made people uncomfortable? What did Enoch reveal that later religious leaders didn't want people to know? If you're enjoying this journey so far, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. There's so much more to discover, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, here's where the controversy begins. And trust me, this gets interesting. Some scholars say the Book of Enoch is completely authentic, written by Enoch himself through divine inspiration. Others say it was written much later by other authors and attributed to Enoch. Some religious traditions accept it as scripture. Others reject it entirely. Who's right? That's a question that has divided religious scholars for centuries. But here's what we know for certain. The Book of Enoch was extremely influential in the ancient world. It was quoted by early church fathers. Parts of it are referenced in the New Testament. The Book of Jude directly quotes from it. And when the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in 1947, containing some of the oldest biblical manuscripts ever found, guess what was included? Multiple copies of the Book of Enoch. So whether you believe it's divinely inspired or not, there's no denying it was important to the people of that time. They read it, studied it, and believed it contained truth. But back to Enoch himself. What happened to him? Genesis chapter 5 gives us the mysterious answer. Enoch walked faithfully with God. Then he was no more, because God took him away. He didn't die. He was taken. But taken where and why? Walking with the divine. Let's pause for a moment and really think about what it means to walk with God. In our modern world, we're surrounded by distractions. Our phones constantly demand our attention. Our jobs stress us out. Our relationships require energy. Our minds are always busy, always processing, always moving. The idea of being constantly aware of God's presence seems almost impossible. How could anyone maintain that kind of focus, that kind of connection? But Enoch lived in a much simpler time. No phones, no internet, no television, no constant noise. Life moved slower. There was space for silence, space for reflection, space for spiritual awareness. And Enoch used that space. Every morning, he would rise and acknowledge God. Every task he performed, he did it with awareness of the divine presence. Every conversation he had, every decision he made, every step he took was done with God in mind. This wasn't religious duty. This wasn't obligation. This was relationship. Think about it this way. When you love someone deeply, you think about them throughout the day. You consider how your actions affect them. You talk to them. You share your thoughts and feelings. You want to be near them. That's how Enoch related to God. Not as a distant, angry judge in the sky, but as a close companion, a friend, a guide, a father. And here's what's beautiful about this. Enoch wasn't special because he had some unique spiritual gift that nobody else had. He was special because he chose to pursue something that everyone has access to. You could walk with God too, right now, in your own life. It's not about being perfect. It's not about never making mistakes. It's not about following a complicated set of rules. It's about desire. It's about choosing to turn your heart toward the divine instead of away from it. It's about developing a constant awareness that there's more to reality than what your physical eyes can see. Enoch proved that it's possible. He showed that a human being living in a fallen world, surrounded by darkness and corruption, can still maintain an intimate connection with the Creator. But that connection came with responsibility, because once you truly see God, once you truly know Him, you can't stay silent. You become a witness. You become a voice. You become someone who carries truth into a world of lies. And that's exactly what happened to Enoch. As his relationship with God deepened, he began to receive visions. These weren't dreams or imagination. They were real, supernatural experiences where his spirit was lifted beyond the physical realm and shown things that were hidden. The first vision came suddenly. Enoch was walking through a valley when he felt the air change. Everything became still, silent, and then he heard a voice. It was deep, powerful, yet somehow gentle. It called his name. Enoch, son of Jared, you have been chosen to see what is hidden. Prepare yourself. What you are about to witness will shake your soul. Before he could respond, Enoch felt himself being lifted, not physically, but spiritually. His body remained on earth, but his consciousness, his awareness, his spirit rose up through the clouds and beyond. What he saw next would change him forever. He saw a throne, not made of wood or stone, but of pure light. Surrounding the throne were beings he had never imagined. creatures with wings of fire, angels singing in perfect harmony, a glory so intense that Enoch felt he might be consumed by it. And then the voice spoke again. "Enoch, I have brought you here because the earth is corrupted. My watchers, the angels I sent to guard humanity, have fallen. They have left their positions. They have mingled with human women. They have taught forbidden knowledge, and their children, the Nephilim, are destroying my creation." Enoch's heart pounded. He had heard rumors of the giants, the mighty warriors who terrorized villages and ruled with cruelty. But he didn't understand where they came from. Now he knew. They were the offspring of fallen angels and human women. They were never meant to exist. They were a corruption of the natural order. And they were spreading violence and chaos everywhere they went. "What can be done?" Enoch asked. "How can this be stopped?" The voice replied, "Judgment is coming, but first, you must go and tell the fallen ones their fate. You must write down everything you see. You must become my scribe, my messenger, my witness." And just like that, Enoch's mission began. If you're finding this fascinating, smash that like button and leave a comment below telling me what you think about Enoch's story so far. Do you believe one person can truly walk that closely with God? Let's discuss it. The forbidden knowledge. Now we come to one of the most controversial parts of Enoch's story, the fallen angels and the knowledge they gave to humanity. According to the Book of Enoch, there were angels called Watchers, whose job was to observe and protect humanity. But something went terribly wrong. These angels looked down at the daughters of men and found them beautiful. They desired them. And in an act of cosmic rebellion, they left their heavenly positions and came down to earth. Their leader was named Azazel, though some texts call him Semjaza. He gathered 200 angels to join him in this rebellion. Together, they made a pact. They swore an oath to all, go through with it together, so that no one could back out. They descended to Mount Hermon, a real mountain that still exists today in the region between modern-day Lebanon and Syria. And there, they took human women as wives. The children born from these unions were the Nephilim, giants who grew to enormous sizes. Some texts say 30 feet tall or more. They were incredibly strong, incredibly violent, and incredibly hungry. The Book of Enoch describes how these giants consumed everything. First, they ate all the food that humans had. Then they started eating the humans themselves. They became monsters that terrorized the earth. But the physical giants weren't the only problem. The fallen angels also taught humanity knowledge that wasn't meant to be revealed yet. Azazel taught men how to make weapons of war. Swords, knives, shields, armor. Suddenly, humans could kill each other more efficiently than ever before. Another fallen angel taught women how to use makeup and jewelry to enhance their beauty, which doesn't sound that bad until you understand it was about manipulation and vanity rather than innocent self-expression. Others taught sorcery, astrology, the movements of the stars for divination, herbs for potions and spells, and how to read omens. Here's the key question. Was this knowledge evil in itself, or was it the timing and method of delivery that made it wrong? Think about it. We have all this knowledge today. We make weapons, we use cosmetics, we study astronomy, we use herbs for medicine. None of these things are inherently evil, but the Book of Enoch suggests that humanity wasn't ready for this knowledge. It was given too soon, without wisdom, without spiritual maturity, without proper understanding. It's like giving a child a loaded gun. The gun itself is neutral, but in the hands of someone who doesn't understand the responsibility and consequences, it becomes deadly. The fallen angels accelerated human development in ways that led to destruction rather than flourishing. They gave knowledge without wisdom, power without responsibility, ability without morality, and the result was catastrophe. The earth became filled with violence. Humanity corrupted itself. The cries of innocent victims reached up to heaven, and God decided that enough was enough. This is when Enoch was called. He was summoned to the heavenly realm and given a message to deliver to the fallen angels. Imagine being Enoch in that moment. You're just an ordinary man, and now you have to stand before powerful, rebellious angels and tell them they're doomed, that their actions have consequences, that judgment is coming. But Enoch didn't refuse. He didn't make excuses. He accepted the mission. He traveled to the place where the fallen angels were gathered, and he stood before them with trembling but determination. "I have been sent with a message from the Most High," Enoch declared. "You have abandoned your positions. You have corrupted humanity. You have fathered children who were never meant to exist, and now you will be punished." Some of the fallen angels tried to plead with him. They asked Enoch to intercede on their behalf, to ask God for mercy, to seek forgiveness. But Enoch was shown in a vision that their fate was already sealed. Unlike humans who can repent and be forgiven, these angels had rebelled with full knowledge of what they were doing. They chose defiance, they chose pride, and their punishment would be eternal. The Book of Enoch describes how these fallen angels would be bound in darkness, imprisoned in a place of torment, until the final day of judgment when they would be cast into the lake of fire forever. Their giant offspring, the Nephilim, would be destroyed, but their spirits would remain on earth, wandering as demons, causing trouble until the end of time. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. Why was this story removed from most Bibles? Why don't most people know about it? Some scholars suggest it was because the story was too strange, too mythological, too hard to fit into standard theological frameworks. Others suggest that religious leaders didn't want people focusing on angels and demons when they should be focusing on God. But there might be another reason. The story of the fallen angels giving forbidden knowledge to humanity is controversial because it suggests that not all human problems are our fault. It suggests that we were influenced, tempted, corrupted by forces beyond our control. That's a dangerous idea, because if we're not entirely responsible for our fallen state, then maybe we need more than just personal reformation. Maybe we need cosmic rescue. Maybe we need intervention from above. And that's exactly what the story of Enoch points toward. A rescue mission, a redeemer, someone who would come to fix what the fallen angels broke. But before we get to that, Enoch had more to see, much more. His journey through the heavens was just beginning. Journey through the 7 heavens. In his visions, Enoch was taken on a journey that would sound like science fiction to modern ears, except it was written thousands of years before science fiction existed. He was lifted up, layer by layer, through 7 levels of heaven, each level more glorious and more terrifying than the last. Let's walk through them together, just as Enoch did. The first heaven was the realm of the atmosphere and weather. Here, Enoch saw angels who controlled the winds, the rain, the snow, and the clouds. They weren't doing this randomly. They followed orders. They maintained the cycles of nature according to divine command. Enoch watched as these angels opened gates to release rain on certain regions while holding it back from others. He saw how every storm, every gentle breeze, every snowflake had purpose and design behind it. In our modern world, we explain weather with science. High pressure systems, low pressure systems, temperature gradients, moisture levels. And those explanations are true. But the Book of Enoch suggests there's another layer, that behind the physical mechanisms are spiritual beings ensuring that creation functions as it should. The second heaven was darker. This was the prison of some of the fallen angels. Not all of them, just certain ones whose crimes were so severe that they were immediately locked away. Enoch saw them chained in darkness, waiting for judgment. They cried out when they sensed him passing by. They begged him to plead for mercy on their behalf. But Enoch could only deliver his message. Their rebellion was too great. Their punishment was set. What must it have been like to see beings who were once glorious, once beautiful, once close to God, now reduced to prisoners in chains? It must have broken Enoch's heart, even as it confirmed God's justice. The third heaven was beautiful beyond words. This was the paradise where the righteous dead were kept, waiting for the resurrection. It was like the Garden of Eden, but even more magnificent. Trees with fruit that glowed with light. Rivers of living water that sang as they flowed. Angels walking among the souls of the faithful, comforting them, teaching them, preparing them for what was to come. But this heaven was divided. On one side was paradise. On the other side was a place of darkness where the wicked dead were held, also waiting for judgment, but with very different expectations. Enoch saw both sides. He saw the peace of the righteous and the anguish of the wicked. He saw that death was not the end, but a transition. And that transition led to very different destinations depending on how a person had lived. The fourth heaven was where the sun, moon, and stars were housed. Yes, you read that right. Enoch described these as being kept in heavenly storehouses, guided by angels along their appointed paths. This sounds strange to our modern understanding. We know the earth orbits the sun. We know the moon orbits the earth. We know stars are distant suns in faraway galaxies. But remember, Enoch was trying to describe spiritual realities using the language and understanding of his time. He wasn't writing a science textbook. He was describing what he saw in vision, trying to put cosmic truths into human words. The key point is this: everything in creation has order. Nothing is random. The movements of celestial bodies aren't just physical laws operating mindlessly. Behind those laws is intelligence, design, purpose. The fifth heaven was filled with warrior angels. These were the army of heaven, ready to be dispatched when needed. They didn't fight for sport or glory. They fought to protect, to defend, to execute judgment when commanded. Their leader was Michael, the archangel, the commander of heaven's forces. Enoch saw him training the angelic hosts, preparing them for battles both past and future. And here's something fascinating. These angels weren't eager for war. They didn't delight in violence. They were sad that war was necessary at all, but they were committed to justice. They would not allow evil to triumph. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. We're about to enter the deepest levels of heaven, and you won't want to miss this. The sixth heaven was the realm of the angelic scribes. These angels had one job: to write down everything that happened, every word spoken, every thought, every action taken. Enoch saw books upon books upon books, scrolls stretching endlessly, records of every human life from beginning to end. This should terrify us and comfort us at the same time. Terrify us because nothing is hidden. Every secret will be revealed. Every hidden deed will come to light. But comfort us because it means nothing is forgotten either. Every act of kindness, every sacrifice made in secret, every tear shed in the dark, all of it is recorded, all of it matters, all of it will be remembered. And finally, the seventh heaven, the throne room of God himself. Enoch struggled to describe what he saw here. Human language simply wasn't adequate. He spoke of light brighter than 10,000 suns, yet somehow gentle. He spoke of beings surrounding the throne, singing constantly, never stopping, never tiring. He spoke of God, seated in majesty, yet also present everywhere at once. He spoke of feeling simultaneously terrified and welcomed, overwhelmed and at peace. In that moment, Enoch understood something profound. God wasn't distant, he wasn't uncaring, he wasn't too busy to notice individual human lives. Instead, God was intimately involved in every detail of creation. He knew every person by name. He cared about every struggle. He noticed every act of faith. And he had a plan to fix what was broken, a plan to redeem what was lost, a plan to restore humanity to its original purpose. Enoch was shown glimpses of this plan. He saw a figure he called the Son of Man, someone who would come to earth as both human and divine, someone who would defeat evil once and for all, someone who would establish an eternal kingdom. This vision filled Enoch with hope. Yes, the world was dark. Yes, evil seemed to be winning. Yes, the fallen angels had corrupted humanity, but it wouldn't always be this way. Rescue was coming. Redemption was promised. Victory was certain. And that brings us to one of the most controversial teachings in the Book of Enoch, the idea that there would be multiple judgments, not just one. The fallen angels and giants. Let's go deeper into the most disturbing part of Enoch's visions. The giants. The Nephilim weren't just tall people. According to ancient texts, including the Book of Enoch, they were monsters. Some descriptions say they grew to heights of 300 cubits, which would be about 450 feet tall. Now, that's clearly exaggerated or symbolic in some way. We've never found human skeletons that large, and the square-cube law of physics would make it impossible for a human-shaped creature to function at that size. But here's what we do know. Unusually large skeletons have been found throughout history. Reports from credible sources describe bones much bigger than normal, and ancient cultures all over the world have legends of giants. The Greeks had their titans. The Norse had their Jotuns. Native American tribes have stories of giant cannibals. Even Pacific Island cultures tell of enormous beings who came before. Are these all just myths, or do they point to something that actually happened? The Book of Enoch claims these giants were violent, cruel, and insatiably hungry. They consumed all the food humans produced, then started consuming humans themselves. Imagine living in a world where massive superhuman creatures hunted you for food, where your crops were stolen, your villages destroyed, your family members eaten. That's the world before the flood, according to Enoch. But here's the controversial question nobody wants to ask. If the Nephilim were destroyed in the flood, why do we still have stories of giants after the flood? The Bible itself mentions giants in Canaan when the Israelites arrived. Goliath was a giant. King Og of Bashan was described as enormous, with a bed 13 feet long. So did some survive the flood? Or did fallen angels repeat their crime after the flood, producing more giants? The Book of Enoch addresses this. It says the physical bodies of the Nephilim were destroyed in the flood, but their spirits remained on earth. These spirits became what we call demons, evil spirits that seek to possess or influence humans. This explains so much about spiritual warfare, doesn't it? These aren't just abstract concepts of evil. According to Enoch, they're actual beings with a history, with origin, with motivation. They're angry because they're trapped between worlds. They can't have physical bodies anymore, so they try to inhabit human bodies. They can't directly destroy humanity, so they tempt and deceive and corrupt. Now here's another question. Why would angels, beings who lived in heaven, who saw God's glory directly, who understood spiritual reality better than any human, why would they rebel? Pride. The same thing that corrupted Lucifer corrupted these watchers. They saw themselves as superior to humans. They believed they deserved more than their assigned roles. They wanted to be worshipped, to be served, to have power over others. Sound familiar? It's the same temptation every human faces. The desire to be God instead of serving God. The fallen angels simply had more power to act on that desire, and the results were catastrophic. Enoch was shown all of this not to satisfy curiosity, but to teach a lesson. When created beings, whether angels or humans, step outside their designed purpose, when they grasp for power and knowledge they weren't meant to have, destruction follows. The antidote is humility. It's accepting that we're not the center of the universe, that there's a design, an order, a plan bigger than ourselves, and that our role is to cooperate with that plan, not to rebel against it. This is why Enoch was chosen, because he embodied that humility. He walked with God, not by asserting himself, but by submitting himself, not by demanding answers, but by accepting revelation, not by seeking power, but by seeking relationship. What do you think about the story of the giants? Is it literal history or symbolic of something deeper? Drop a comment and let me know your thoughts. The book that changed everything after all his visions, after all his journeys through the heavens, Enoch was given a final command. Write it all down. Every vision, every revelation, every message from God. All of it needed to be recorded so that future generations would know the truth. So Enoch became a scribe. He wrote with careful detail, describing things that must have seemed impossible even to him. He knew people would doubt. He knew they would question, but he wrote anyway because the command came from God himself. The Book of Enoch, as it came to be called, contained several sections. There were the parables, teaching about judgment and redemption through symbolic stories. There were the astronomical sections, describing the movements of heavenly bodies and the calendar God designed. There were the visions of heaven, the descriptions of angels and their roles, the prophecies about the coming Messiah, and the warnings about the fallen angels and their eventual punishment. This book became treasured among the faithful. It was copied and shared. It was studied and quoted. For centuries, it was considered authoritative scripture by many communities. But then, something changed. As Christian theology developed and became more organized, church leaders started deciding which books should be considered officially canonical and which should be set aside. The Book of Enoch didn't make the cut for most Christian denominations. Why not? Some say it was because it contained teachings that seemed too strange, too focused on angels and demons rather than on Jesus. Others say it was because its authorship couldn't be verified. Still others suggest political reasons, that certain leaders didn't like its implications. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church, however, never removed it. They kept the Book of Enoch in their Bible and continue to read it as scripture to this day. And when those Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, confirming that ancient Jewish communities treasured the Book of Enoch, it forced scholars to reconsider. Maybe this book was more important than modern readers realized. Here's something most people don't know. The New Testament writers clearly knew the Book of Enoch and were influenced by it. The Book of Jude directly quotes from Enoch, mentioning a prophecy about the Lord coming with 10,000s of his saints to execute judgment. That's straight from the Book of Enoch. Peter's letters reference the angels who sinned and were cast into chains of darkness, again echoing Enoch's teachings. Jesus himself spoke about the days of Noah, when people were eating and drinking and marrying, unaware that judgment was coming. That's the exact scenario the Book of Enoch describes, with the fallen angels taking wives and the Nephilim corrupting the earth. So even though most Christians don't read the Book of Enoch today, its influence is woven throughout the New Testament. The early believers knew it, referenced it, and considered it valuable for understanding God's plan. What was in this book that made it so important? First, it explained the origin of evil in detail that Genesis only hints at. It showed that evil didn't just appear randomly. It had a source. Rebellious angels made choices that infected creation. Second, it revealed the structure of the spiritual realm, the levels of heaven, the types of angels, the way God's government functions. It gave believers a glimpse behind the curtain of physical reality. Third, it provided hope. Despite all the darkness, despite the power of the fallen angels, despite the violence of the giants, God remained in control. Judgment was coming. Evil would be defeated, the righteous would be vindicated. Fourth, it pointed to a coming Redeemer, that mysterious Son of Man figure who would be both human and divine, who would execute judgment and establish an eternal kingdom. Early Christians recognized this as a prophecy about Jesus. But perhaps, most importantly, the Book of Enoch taught that the spiritual realm is real and active. We don't live in a purely material universe. There are invisible forces at work, both good and evil. Angels and demons aren't just symbols or metaphors. They're actual beings with actual influence over human affairs. That's a controversial claim in our modern world. We like to think we're purely rational beings in a purely physical universe. We explain everything through natural causes and scientific laws. But what if there's more? What if the ancient understanding was correct? What if the material world we see is just the surface, and beneath it is a vast spiritual reality we barely perceive? That's what Enoch's book suggests. And if it's true, it changes everything about how we should live. If you're enjoying this deep dive into ancient mysteries, do me a favor and hit that like button. It helps more people discover these fascinating stories. Secrets of Time and Eternity. One of the most fascinating sections of the Book of Enoch deals with time itself. Not just human time, but cosmic time. The cycles and seasons and appointed moments that govern creation. Enoch was shown a heavenly calendar, different from the calendar most of us use today. It was based on the sun rather than the moon, with exactly 364 days, perfectly divisible by 7. This meant that festivals and holy days would always fall on the same day of the week every year. No complicated calculations needed, no debates about when to observe sacred times. Everything was ordered, predictable, perfect. Compare that to our current calendar, which is a bit of a mess. Months of different length, leap years to correct for the fact that Earth's orbit doesn't divide evenly, dates that shift from year to year. It works, but it's not elegant. The calendar Enoch described was elegant. It reflected the divine order he saw in his visions. Everything in its place, everything with purpose, everything harmonious. But the calendar wasn't just about tracking days. It represented something deeper. The idea that time itself has meaning, that history isn't just one random event after another, that there's a plan unfolding across the ages. Enoch saw that plan. He was shown how time would progress from creation to final judgment. He saw key moments marked out in advance. The flood, the giving of the law, the coming of the Messiah, the final battle, the eternal kingdom, all of it predetermined, not because humans lack free will, but because God exists outside of time and can see the end from the beginning. Think about that for a moment. What does it mean that God sees all of time at once? That past, present, and future are all equally visible to Him. It means that when you pray, God has already heard your prayer and answered it before you even spoke, because He exists in your future as much as your present. It means that every promise God made is already fulfilled from His perspective, even if we're still waiting to see it happen in our timeline. It means that the victory over evil is already won, even though the battle is still raging in our experience. This is the perspective Enoch gained. He saw time from God's viewpoint, and it changed him. He realized that everything is temporary except God, that every empire will fall, that every powerful person will eventually turn to dust, that wealth, fame, beauty, strength, all of it fades. But those who walk with God, who align themselves with His eternal purposes, they become part of something that lasts forever. That's why Enoch didn't mourn when he was taken from earth. He wasn't losing something, he was gaining everything. He was stepping out of temporary time into eternal time, out of the material realm into the spiritual realm, out of death's shadow into life's fullness. And here's the beautiful part. The Book of Enoch suggests that what happened to Enoch is a preview of what will happen to all believers eventually. We're not meant to stay trapped in these mortal bodies forever. We're not meant to be limited by time and space. We're destined for something more, something glorious, something eternal. Death is not the end. It's a transition, a doorway, a transformation. Enoch proved it was possible to cross that doorway without dying first. And later, Elijah would do the same thing, taken up to heaven in a chariot of fire. These weren't accidents, they were signs, messages from God saying, Death doesn't have the final word, I do. And then Jesus came and confirmed it completely. He died, yes, but then he rose again. He defeated death from the inside. And he promised that everyone who believes in him would also rise, would also be transformed, would also live forever. That's the hope the Book of Enoch pointed toward. That's the promise woven throughout Enoch's visions and prophecies. We're not meant for this fallen world. We're meant for the world to come, the eternal world, the restored creation where God dwells with his people, and there's no more tears, no more pain, no more death. Enoch saw that world. He was taken into it, and his testimony is that it's real, more real than anything we experience now. So what does this mean for us today? How should knowing about Enoch change the way we live? First, it should give us perspective. Our problems, as real as they feel, are temporary. The struggles we face, the pain we endure, the questions we wrestle with, they're all part of a bigger story that's moving toward resolution. Second, it should give us hope. If God cared enough about one ordinary man named Enoch to share his secrets and ultimately bring him to heaven without dying, then God cares about you too. Your life matters. Your faith matters. Your choices matter. Third, it should give us courage. We live in a world that's still corrupted by evil. Spiritual forces still war against goodness. But we're not alone. Angels are real. God's power is real. And the outcome is already determined. Good wins. Love wins. Truth wins. Finally, it should inspire us to walk with God the way Enoch did. To develop that daily, moment by moment awareness of the divine presence, to seek truth rather than comfort, to choose faithfulness over popularity, to live for eternity rather than for the temporary. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel because we explore these kinds of deep spiritual truths regularly, and share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. The final transformation. So what happened to Enoch at the end? The Bible is frustratingly brief. Enoch walked faithfully with God. Then he was no more because God took him away. But the Book of Enoch adds details. It describes his final moments on earth. Enoch knew his time was coming. He had been told in visions that he wouldn't die in the normal way. He began to feel his body changing, becoming lighter, less solid, as if the material world was loosening its grip on him. He gathered his family together. He spoke to them about everything he had learned. He urged them to remain faithful to God. He warned them that difficult times were coming. He promised them that if they held on to truth, they would see him again in the eternal realm. And then, one day, as he was walking, the transformation completed. His body simply dissolved, not into dust, but into light. He was pulled upward, out of this dimension and into the next. The Bible says God took him, but where did God take him? What happened next? According to Jewish tradition, Enoch was transformed into the angel Metatron, the highest of all angels, who stands constantly before God's throne and serves as a mediator between heaven and earth. That's not in the Bible, and many Christians don't accept that tradition, but it shows how important Enoch became in Jewish thought. He wasn't just a man who died and went to heaven. He became something more, something transformed. Whether or not he literally became an angel, the symbolism is powerful. Enoch represents the ultimate possibility for humanity, complete transformation, full glorification, being so saturated with God's presence that you become something new while still being yourself. That's what resurrection promises. That's what Jesus demonstrated. That's what awaits everyone who walks with God the way Enoch did. Your body will fail eventually. That's the reality of living in a fallen world. But you, the real you, your soul, your consciousness, your essence, that can be transformed and preserved forever. Enoch proved it's possible, and his story has echoed through thousands of years to reach you right here, right now, as you listen to these words. You have the same opportunity Enoch had to walk with God, to seek truth, to develop that intimate relationship with the Creator that transcends normal human experience. It won't be easy. The world will mock you. People will think you're strange. You'll face the same opposition and corruption Enoch faced, but the reward is worth it. To live with constant awareness of God's presence, to receive wisdom and revelation, to have confidence that death is not the end, to know that your life has eternal significance. That's the legacy of Enoch. That's the message of his extraordinary life. He was a man who walked with God in a world of darkness and was taken into eternal light. And his story is an invitation to each of us to do the same. To walk, to seek, to believe, to hope, to transform. Before you go to sleep tonight, before you drift off into dreams, take a moment to think about what you heard. The man who never died, the visions of heaven, the fallen angels, the coming judgment, the promise of redemption, all of it points to one truth. There's more to reality than what you see, and you're invited to discover it. Walk with God, just like Enoch did. And who knows, maybe one day you too will be transformed. Maybe one day you too will cross from this temporary world into the eternal one. Not because you're perfect, not because you earned it, but because you chose to walk, you chose to seek, you chose to believe. That's all it takes, and it changes everything. Sleep well, knowing that the same God who walked with Enoch is walking with you right now, watching over you, caring for you, preparing a place for you in the world to come. This is the story of Enoch, the man who walked with God and disappeared into glory. And it's a story that continues today in the life of everyone who chooses to follow his example. Good night, and may your dreams be filled with visions of heaven.